Today we're talking about EXO into Starlight, an interdimensional exploration-driven game created by indie developer Superframe. Let's get into it. Why don't you start by just kind of telling me about the studio, the team behind the game, where the name came from, all that sort of stuff.
I've been around for a long time making games under different business names. About a few years ago, I incorporated a Superframe. The idea there was to have something that would, encompass both the web development that I was doing and the game. So that allowed me to kind of progress in a business sense. So I still continue to have clients in the web space, and they keep me busy. But I got plenty of time, especially through COVID, to work on game stuff. And so this particular project is really my COVID project, right? I mean, I just was at home a lot, and I've just been kind of hammering on it straight through. I'm mostly a solo dev. I do use contractors as I need them to kind of build things. And now I'm in a place where I'm actually hiring people. So I've got a level designer that I'm putting to work to help me assemble all this content that I've been creating. And then another gentleman down in San Francisco who owns a studio there, and he's a musician and also a studio owner, and he's been helping me with brand things, getting the music done, and also business development and helping to get the word out. So I think like this month, officially we're sort of a 3-person team. And then the other question was the name.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah, Superframe. Kind of where did that branch out from?
Well, once again, I needed something that encompassed both those worlds, sort of the interactive media design and the game development. That was the origin of the company name.
Okay.
As far as EXO, the game, kind of changed a little bit from the beginning. It started out and it was a multiplayer sort of space adventure game, and we actually have that prototyped out too. And it was a very realistic sort of game, and it was just a lot to take on. And so the idea kind of came about halfway through, where we saw real brand potential in focusing on the main character. And this idea of a research android. So something that, related to exoplanets is kind of where that started. Originally it was a working title, but people really like it. And I've talked to people about changing the name, and everybody's like, no, keep it. So we're trying to respond to our users and, give people the game that they want, right?
No, that makes a lot of sense. So you've been working on the game since like early 2020 at this point, so about a year now?
Yeah, I would say that's when EXO was born, right? There was a year or two before that where we have this, this multiplayer game. That one's kind of interesting too. You might be seeing something about that, how that one, we might bring some of these elements to EXO too. We thought about making it multiplayer. How it works is it uses proximity voice chat. So as you're playing with your, the other player in the game, as you get far away from each other, you can't hear each other. So you can go out and kind of explore on your own, and then you come back together and it gives you something to talk about, and it's kind of a neat feature. But we're holding off on that for now, just because multiplayer is just a real technical snarl. There's just so much that you need to consider.
Yeah.
But we've made some headway there too.
Okay. Tell me about you mentioned the development and how it's kind of evolved, but kind of where are you at this point, and from a development standpoint, how has the game kind of progressed since you started working on it? And just tell me about kind of what engine is it built on and why you chose that specifically.
Something I've learned, this isn't my first game. I've got a few of them behind me. I've got pretty deep into the VR world. And I'm sure, as you know, and you probably hear this a lot, the last 5% is always the hardest part, right? Mm-hmm. So there's all those things like the UI integration, dialing in the controls, ironing out the bugs, the whole inventory aspect. Those things are big time sinks. Mm-hmm. So we've got all that done. So we have a 1-level game, and it's in early access on Steam now. And that was kind of the plan, to really just get the bulk of that done so we could focus on content and making really exciting and exotic worlds for people to explore in. So right now we have four levels of content, that are complete, and those are being assembled. And, this may stray from your question a little bit, but kind of the business plan is to be an early release and have the pricing that we're using on early release to reflect how many levels there are. So it's going to be inexpensive for the 1-level demo, and then there's going to be a 4-level demo. It's going to rise a little bit. But the thing is, anybody who buys our game, they're a customer for life, at least for the first version of this, which is Into Starlight, right? And then there'll also probably be some perks, like they may get a bonus level and a PDF art book. So just try to be kind to the people that believe in us, right? And then the 4-level demo is slated for Q1 of this year.
Okay.
I think we had pretty ambitious goals at the beginning, but now we're really kind of narrowing in on what we can really get done. So
when you actually fully launch the game, how many worlds are going to be in it as a total?
9.
9? Okay. All right.
And then probably a bonus level will be 10.
Gotcha.
So.
All right. So kind of with that in mind, tell me about the different environments, the different worlds players are going to be able to explore. Kind of touch on that a little bit for me.
Sure. Yeah, we started with just planets, right?
Mhm.
So we started looking at the idea of, jungle planets, desert planets, volcanic worlds, things of that nature.
Mhm.
And just to talk a little bit about the brand and what we're doing. So we got really excited when immersive adventure games kind of came into the fore. Games like Journey and Abzu, which didn't rely on combat, right?
Mhm.
Which had exploration and just the beauty of the worlds to really kind of pull the player along. We saw real potential in that in the very beginning and doing that in a sci-fi environment because it just really unlocks the potential to create beautiful environments and exotic and strange environments and kind of give people the passion to move forward, like what's around the corner, right?
Yeah.
So that's really kind of what we're focusing on. So towards that, we decided that not only to do just exotic planets, to make this alien portal, which is the way that you progress through the games, be an interdimensional portal, right? So now we're exploring the idea of the multiverse, right? So there's going to be microscopic worlds. There'll be like ones where you're in interstellar space, and a couple of the other things. I don't want to give it all away, but the idea is to really build out some really creative and exotic stuff that makes the game more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it kind of varies, obviously, based on the worlds you're going to be in, but can you kind of touch on how big the different areas will be, just as an average, just kind of touching on one specifically to another? And then is there going to be a day and night cycle? Is there going to be like a seasonal aspect to some of these worlds? Kind of how is that going to play into the game itself?
Well, you don't stay on the worlds very long. I mean, you stay on for one level.
Okay.
Right. So although seasonal is an interesting idea, I think there'll definitely be, atmospheric environments. Like one level might be like, in the early morning or things of that nature.
Okay.
But we hadn't really planned for that. But as far as the size of the world, right now they're pretty big. They're 9 Unity terrains. And, people, wanted more. We didn't think that they would, but the feedback that we're getting is, they're like, why am I limited in the game area? So we're looking at a couple options right now. We actually have something prototyped out where it will be infinite, where you can just kind of go as far as you want. I think all of the central gameplay will be in the center, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to just keep flying around, you can. So yeah, that's where we're at with the size. We'll test that out and see how people feel about it.
Is that a viable option for you guys? I'd imagine at a point the content would kind of start to get stretched to a degree.
I think that's the reality, is that really the core of the content would be in the center. There are ways to programmatically drop plants and little even like encampments. We have like alien civilizations and stuff. So again, that's a maybe right now. Right now the worlds are pretty big. I'd say around 10 kilometers square, and the bulk of the action happens in the center. And really, you get enough of the world in that time. By the time you've collected all the artifacts, you're kind of ready to move on, activate the portal, and get on to the next world.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So tell me about kind of the different creatures people are going to see in the game itself. Kind of just how do they vary, how do they differ, and how can you really interact with all of them?
Okay, well, let me start just by talking a little bit about what the creatures are going to look like. A lot of sci-fi games, focus on horror and things like that, and there's a tendency to, when you explore different worlds, to have like really intense and dangerous creatures. We're going with something that's a little bit more, I don't want to say Pixar-esque, but it's going to be, kind of a more beautiful worlds and simple worlds. So it's not a really there's going to definitely be dangers and toxic environment stuff like volcanic, worlds and things like that. But really it's all about beauty, right? So the characters are all, pretty well designed and, are going to have that kind of look to them. And as far as the different types, right, they're all going to be connected to the different worlds. So the level that we have now is called Lumina. It's a bioluminescent planet. So all the creatures on there are glowing in one way or another. So they're all specific to the world that they're in. Like the volcanic world will have rock monsters, things of that nature. And again, some more surprises. I don't want to give all that away. But another really important or interesting thing about the game is that there's civilizations. They're all kind of primitive, right? There's not like spacefaring civilizations or anything, but there's like civilizations that are in the early stages of development, and you're just kind of playing the role of the observer.
Okay.
So mostly they run away from you, I think that we've been talking about having some sentient creatures that maybe you kind of try to talk to and communicate with, but it's really mostly passive. It's more just exploring and looking at them. And then there's threats, and you have to avoid them. And that was important to the game because there have to be stakes in the game, right? So as you're collecting things, you have to be strategic and wait for them to get out of the way. But right now, even though people have called for it, we're really trying to avoid the idea of combat and actually, firing at things. It's just a little bit outside of what we're trying to do.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So with that in mind, you briefly kind of touched on it. Tell me about the story behind the game itself.
I'll tell you as much as I can because, like I said, I don't want to give it away. Basically, there's a interdimensional portal that ends up in Earth's orbit, and nobody knows how it got there. So the International Space Agency gets together and goes, well, we want to explore this thing, but we're not ready to send humans through, right? So they create this android, that's super powerful, well, not super powerful, but powerful and does certain things. Yeah. And that is the purpose of that. The purpose of that android is to go through this portal and explore these worlds and to report back. So it has like communication back to mission control, as it were. So there's a narrative aspect to it, right? So the android talks and says things, as it discovers things, and then it communicates back with mission control, and mission control finds things and gives has it sort of go out there and find them. So that's basically it. And so the idea is to understand, what is this portal? Why is it here? Why are these aliens trying to communicate with us? And they have this language that they talk in, or communicate with, which is told in with a series of glyphs, right? And then there's also some DNA fragments that they have left behind. So that becomes part of the puzzle aspect. So as far as the DNA aspect is that you collect fragments. You collect fragments of DNA from different creatures as you go through each level. And you're basically trying to complete the DNA. And once you complete the DNA segment, there's a surprise there, which, obviously I'm going to let that play out in the game. And then the glyphs are also kind of interesting too, because you end up making these like sentences to solve these puzzles. So you kind of have to figure out what they're trying to say. It's not really difficult. There's a lot of clues as to how to get there. But yeah, so that's it. It's the alien species. You're sort of following in their footsteps, and they're taking you on a tour of the universe.
Talk to me about kind of the puzzle aspect of the game itself. Tell me about how those work, kind of just as an overall aspect, kind of how they'll play out in the game.
They're pretty straightforward. Basically, there's alien glyphs that you need to find that are scattered around the planet, right? So that gives you a motivation to go find them. And we haven't talked about the little drone that helps you. You also have this little drone character that helps you as you go along. So you can hit a key and send it out, and it'll start scanning, area and looking for things, and it'll place markers by the different things that you need to find. And the little markers are indicative of whether it's a life form, a landmark, or an artifact, things of that nature. So then when you find that, what you need to do is there's certain things you have to find, certain things are optional, right?
Yeah.
The alien glyphs are not optional. You have to find those because you need those to solve the puzzle. So the puzzle is just a big holographic sphere where you see all of these icons. And when you click on them, they say what the icon means, or the glyph, say what the glyph means. And then, you get the three different glyphs together, and it makes like a short little sentence, and it's just sort of evocative. It's not, really, essential to the gameplay, but it kind of tells you a little bit about the brand of the game and what we're trying to do. And the other thing is that we're also attacking social concepts a little bit. So like there's a planet that's been destroyed by climate change. There's planets where characters have been enslaved.
Okay.
We get into a few different things, which probably take us beyond the length of this interview, but
yeah.
So there's a little bit of there's some story in that too.
So it really kind of focuses overall on kind of the story aspect and just as the worlds as you progress. Basically, it's not so much on kind of, I guess you would say it's not so much focus on like really these in-depth puzzles. It's more just kind of going into the world and experiencing like the different social dynamics and all of them, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's not essential to the progression of the game. It is. You have to unlock it you have to unlock the Stargate to get through it. But we purposely made that not too difficult to do. It's not one of these things where it's a real head scratcher. It's more about just immersive sci-fi adventure.
Gotcha. The portal, the way it works, is it like you have to build it, or it's just kind of there and you kind of use it as you need to, basically, as you play?
It travels with you. So you
okay.
start in Earth's orbit, right? And when you go through it, you arrive. It's like there's even potential for it to be bi-directional, where you can go back in and go to the other world. There's some technical challenges with that, and I don't know if we're going to do that, but you can definitely see through the portal.
Okay.
So when you encounter the portal, you see the other world, and then when you pass through it, you're on that world, and that portal's still there, and where you came from is behind you. So
okay,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. And with the so you have the jetpack and you have the ROV drone. Can those be upgraded in any way so they can like do more as you progress through the game, or are they kind of set in a specific way as you play and you just work with them as you go?
A couple of things that we're working on right now and that we plan to get into the main game is to have right now the jetpack is infinite, right? It's a jetpack simulator. I mean, you've heard of walking simulators. We're kind of a jetpack simulator, right? But we're thinking about, having that. And at first we had it that way. We had it where the jetpack was limited, but everybody was like, I want infinite jetpack, So once again, you give people what they want, right? But the drone for sure. And there's also this, there's some kind of decorative stuff. So like there's these upgrades. When you finish a level, you get a holographic award. It's sort of an achievement that you unlock, and the holograms that you get sort of build. So as you go through the game, you're sort of like collecting pieces that become a reveal at the end, right? So there's the DNA puzzle, right? Then there's the narrative layer with all the glyphs, and then there's these kind of holographic, sort of awards that are just really more of a visual thing. And it's just meant to be evocative, but to help sell the story at the end.
Yeah, and so with your character, can you customize it in any way? I'd meant to actually write this question down, I missed it, but is there any way you can kind of customize the way your character looks in any way as the game goes on?
If people ask for that, right now we started with a darker sort of black character, and then we moved to more of a white character, just because we thought it got that like International Space Agency scientific look about it. But we could easily have you swap between those two skins. But I do think drone upgrades are definitely a thing, right? So as you get more powerful and you find alien technology, the drone will get farther reach, and will be able to like create wireframe blueprints, things of that nature. A lot of that stuff's just in conversation, but there's definitely going to be some upgrades. But again, Abzu is like one of those games that's really sort of a pattern for us, right? I mean, it's just all about flow and travel and experience and unlocking evocative and enticing worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of the jetpack and the drone, is there kind of other stuff you work with in the game, or you haven't planned on that yet?
Well, there's artifacts on each world, so each world kind of tells its own story. For example, Lumina, right? There's a civilization that's long gone, so you find these artifacts of this people that once lived on this planet. So there's definitely things of that nature, and part of that again is trying to talk about some of these social issues. Like there's a planet where it was destroyed by war, right, and things of that nature. But yeah, mostly that.
Gotcha. Okay. And so another thing that comes to mind, actually, I know it's kind of hard to answer this one, but as an average, kind of how long would you expect with the 4 levels you have right now, kind of a full playthrough to be? I know it's kind of hard because there's the exploration factor that comes into play. I don't know with an exploration style game if that's even really a viable question to answer, but is it something you could kind of estimate at this point, or no?
Well, okay, I'll answer it this way. I think if you power through the first level, right, and you're good at games, and you know how things are constructed, right? Yeah, probably 10, 20 minutes. But the thing is, my brother was playing it, I was watching him, he just sat there and like looked at a rock for 20 minutes, So it's like, how people are going to play it, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big world. There's lots of things to collect, but a lot of it's optional. See, that's the thing. That's why it's hard to gauge that. If you just want to get the necessary things and get to the next Stargate, you can do it quickly. If you really want to explore and see all the content we've created, it's going to take you a little bit longer.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the only other thing that I can think of really is kind of, you'd mentioned the DNA puzzle. Can you go a little bit more in detail with that before we kind of move on?
Well, okay, so the thing about the Lost Race, right? There's this alien race that predates all these civilizations, and they're the one you're kind of following along, and they're the one who left this DNA puzzle all along. So you are assembling DNA, and I think the expectation is it's going to be a DNA of some sort of living creature, but I don't want to give that away. So
okay. All right. So tell me about kind of your favorite part of the game as a whole, whether it's, as a world at this point, whether it's the main character itself, the drone, whatever it could be.
Well, let me throw in a quick pitch for Superframe in general. We're prototyping a few games right now. We have 2 other games right now that are actually pretty interesting, and we're just focusing on this one now. So the thing about EXO is this concept's been around for a long time. So for me, it's just like this great, amazing way to explore creativity, right? Because there's no bounds to what can be created. And I'm all about working with other designers and creators to help me with this. And so that is what I think makes this game a little bit special, is that there's really no bound to the creativity that can happen. Not only is it, interstellar and space game, but there's this interdimensional concept. So there's ability to take this character to some really interesting places.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of talk to me about the roadmap moving forward for it, though. So, you have the 4 levels at this point in kind of the demo phase. When do you plan to roll
Yeah.
out the whole game itself?
I wish I could answer that. I'm leery about that because,
Mm.
like I said that early on. I had some expectations, and I just missed them altogether. And I don't want people to be let down. But one thing for sure, the 4-level demo is happening, right? And that's going to happen in Q1. The next phase for us is to probably reach out to publishers and see if we can get some financial assistance.
Okay.
And if we can do that, the thing's going to come together. I would like to, if I had the resources that I need, I would start focusing on console ports right now, But that kind of trying to do that as a really small team is just too much of a challenge. I'm a PlayStation partner, which is good, so I have that avenue open. So I'm just going to keep plugging along and making levels. But realistically, like I said, all of the core heart stuff is really, really done. Prototyping planets doesn't take as long as you might think. Creating species does, right? And plants are easy, but the civilizations. But I have 2 civilizations that you'll encounter in the actually three civilizations that you'll encounter in the 4. It's going to be a 4 or 5 level demo coming out in Q1.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to be a bit of a game in itself, and that's going to be available in early release. And once again, the price is probably going to go up $5. So, I have a pitch deck, and I think that I just went a little bit large on that. So I accounted for a whole another year of development to prototype the other 5 worlds, and that's starting to seem a lot more realistic to me than our original projections.
Okay. And one other thing, you brought up the 3 different civilizations. I know you said usually, the primitive, you kind of come in contact with them and they just kind of run off. Is there any kind of interaction you have with them as you play through? Like, is there any way you can talk to them, or is it...
No. Well, like I said, there is potential to have these characters in the games that are like sentient creatures, and I think at that point it would be maybe just a one-way communication, and the drone deciphers what they're saying. Maybe some kind of two-way, but mostly it's going to be more interactive, right? So here's one thing I don't think anybody knows, so this is for you. On the jungle planet, there are like these tribal creatures, right? And they're ones that are like bigger and black, and smaller ones that are red. The ones that are smaller are enslaved, and they're in cages, right? And so you can let them out, right? And then they're happy to have been let out. So there's those kind of interactions, right?
Yeah.
And it also talks about, slavery a little bit, So, I mean, there's things like that are happening. But for the most part, it's environmental, and you just kind of think about it. You're floating on this alien world as an android, and nobody really, has, knows each other's language, right?
Yeah.
So you float by these things, and they don't know what's going on. And plus, they're kind of primitive. They see you maybe as a god or whatever. So, and a lot of that's still open-ended. We'd like to incorporate more of that, but really, it's a game of being an observer and looking at these alien civilizations.
Okay. So with that in mind, you mentioned, your PlayStation partner. What is, if anything, other platform-wise, are you trying to get this game to at some point?
I think Steam Deck is a natural,
So,
because I think that it'll just translate right over. What I've seen people doing with that is they just plug it into that thing and everything works. So that's the thing. I'd try to port it to everything, but honestly, each platform is its own animal and can be really challenging. I think PlayStation for sure, though. That's why I became a PlayStation partner. That was definitely one of my goals was to get it on that particular platform. I like their brand, and I like the kind of games that they get exclusives on. So
no, that makes.
But Switch too. I think that's a real potential. It's not super detailed. It's not Halo 6 or whatever. So. I think that again, it's a way to explore something that just goes beyond traditional sci-fi environments and see things that are just more exotic and maybe even abstract. And I come from a startup background, and one thing that's really, really important about startups is that you give people what they want, right? You really got to do your user research.
Yeah.
You got to dig in and find out what people are doing. So we're using that model. We're trying to get as many people into our game as possible and give us feedback. And then we plan to pivot on that feedback, and if there's a real call for us to go one direction or another, we will, and we've done a lot of that to date, right? So what you have right now is really something that's already been user tested, and hopefully go in the right direction.
I have to ask, just from the user feedback alone, how much has that really changed the overall game from when you first kind of started releasing it out to people?
Well, like I said, the jetpack thing was the first one.
Gotcha.
Right? We were going to be like, this will be our mechanic, right? You have to find energy to power the
Mhm.
jetpack, and that'll be cool. And people were like, no, that's not cool. We want to fly all the time,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So things of that nature. We don't get a lot of feedback on the actual design.
Mhm.
We're pretty happy with the the design of the game and things like that. But honestly, I think for any game project, the real key is finding the fun,
Yeah.
right? Anybody can prototype stuff, and you have an idea and you get it out there, and everything's a hypothesis,
Mhm.
right? You never know what's working until you know that it's working.
EXO and Starlight is over on Steam in early access right now. I have all of Superframe's social media pages linked below. Go over there, support him. And while you're here, check out these videos that are about to pop up on either side of me. And I can't wait for you to subscribe as well, because there's more content on the way. So, I'm not wasting any more time. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you on the flip side. Take it easy.